Well, hello. This is straight into answers to all your YouTube questions. So if you're watching this on Facebook, I'll still see your comments. I can't see the YouTube comments, but I can see them here. So if you've got any questions, last minute ones that you didn't see come up, I'll have a look at them at the end before I sign off because there's only about, I think there's maybe 20 questions or something. Certainly, a lot of our followers have wandered away during the course of the last weeks since Kirsten and Abelish have finished and Simon. And now we're just waiting in for Jeremy, who's got some pretty horrific headwinds that are going to hold on for quite some time. But anyway, that's the name of the game. So, first question here was from HW. Why don't sailors ever tack up the coast to avoid the unpredictable Azores highs and getting stuck like Jeremy? Well, Jeremy hasn't been stuck sort of because he's doing anything wrong. It's just the position of the Azores high. It's sort of quite a way out, and it's over the other side, and it formed up because of what was happening up in the northwest of the Atlantic. And as you saw, as he was going in, it was a very indistinct high. And one formed around him. It's all a bit crazy. So, and you don't always get consistent breezes, but certainly if you saw Kirsten and Abelish and Simon going up, it was all pretty much like a highway, and they kept going. So you can go the inside track along the coast, but often it doesn't work. Usually going out wide and heading north and hooking across is the traditional way through. So I think people are just following the usual track, and usually it works out okay. But for Jeremy, he's really lucked out big time, and it's going to go on for more days yet. So, so I wouldn't say he's done anything wrong. He's just going the normal way. Okay, so from Paul Hayes, hi Don, can you talk a little bit about the large 15% of LOA collision bulkhead requirement? Are these common for sailors outside of competitive events like the Golden Globe? Is it best practice in high and low latitude sailing, but not really relevant in middle latitudes? Well, it just depends. You know, if you're in a high risk situation, a crash bulkhead up forward is really handy. You saw what happened to Abelish. I mean, that was fully crewed, and the watch crew reading a book, and they planted themselves right on the side of a big ship, ripped the nose off the bow. Fortunately, it was good condition. If it was really rough, and so the bow was pitching, and there wasn't a bulkhead there, it could have been, it could have been quite serious. Fortunately, the weather was good, so the bow wasn't pitching, but there was also a collision bulkhead behind that, which actually would have saved flooding the boat anyway. So that's a good move. I've had situations in my own boat going to Antarctica on more than a few occasions when we split the bow and flooded the crash bulkhead up forward. That was on an aluminium boat called Spirit of Sydney. Designed and built for the BOC challenge many years ago. It was only a 4mm thick hull, but it had a lot of watertight bulkheads. And the first one was a collision bulkhead, and we filled that a couple of times with collisions, and one we didn't even really know about, and so on. So it just depends on the type of sailing you're doing. You'll know if you consider yourself to be high risk, and if you are, then you should put in a collision bulkhead. It's a good idea, and it could save you one day. If it's normal sailing, it's not so relevant because the risks aren't high enough. If you're sailing fully crewed all the time and you're cruising across the Atlantic and everything, most production boats don't have that. Some of them do. They have a watertight anchor locker there. You can check that out. Different designs of boats. I remember I was looking at a Beneteau 411 monohull. Really nice potential cruising boat because it has a masthead rig and it's really strong. It was built back in the era where you had proper frames and bulkheads were actually glassed onto those frames instead of free floating and stuff. It effectively had like a collision bulkhead. So some of production boats do have it. Rick Halstead, even though the West Sail 32 is approved for the event, I've not seen any of the skippers selecting this boat for the race. You've said many times that GGR is a race of attrition. Since the West Sail 32 is such a stout boat and widely available, why do you think skippers have stayed away from selecting it for the race? Thanks in advance. Well, I've got to agree with you, firstly. The West Sail 32 is a pretty nice boat. It's not a replica of Suhaili, but it's so similar, it doesn't really matter. And at one stage, I even thought of buying a West Sail 32 and sort of putting a ketch rig on it which no one ever really did, which is really strange, but in one way, because catch rigs are nice, but at the same time, it makes more money and it's more complication, more things to maintain and so on. So why go catch when there's a nice cutter rig version of it? But yeah, it's a nice boat. It would do quite, I think it would surprise a few people in the GGR because, they're not that slow. They're not fast by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, many people call them the West Snail, right, instead of a West Sail. But it's a pretty wholesome boat and they're good value. Sometimes you can pick them up really cheap. And for the effort of building a hull and deck, for instance, you get a boat that's sort of pretty much ready to go. So yeah, it's a good question. I don't know why no one's actually entered one yet. But if you wanted to do the GGR and get around, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the West Sail 32. Get all the key elements right, the rudder and the rig and hatches and portholes and stuff. It's a good boat. I haven't got a problem with it. No, I've got no idea. Most people, no, not most. There's a big element of what boats are in your area to buy and refit easily. Okay, it comes down to what's close by, and a lot of the West Sails are over in America, and a lot of the entrants are in Europe and UK and stuff. So it doesn't fit. That might be one reason. Mark, hi. When looking for a boat to live and sail on in the South Pacific, how important is the boat's calculations? The capsize screaming formula, displacement, length ratio, etc. Because newer boats' calculations look very different to the older ones. How important were they when buying your Swan Explorer? Well, first of all, if there's been a lot of any of the boats produced, even without looking at the numbers, you can say pretty clearly that they must work, okay, and they must be safe, generally speaking. So it's not so super critical for the average person wanting to buy a boat to set up to go to the South Pacific to start checking all the numbers, but it's a good thing to do if you understand what the numbers are. Otherwise, the best thing you could do is if you've got an idea on a certain boat, first of all, Google that boat. Go for the forums. If there's a bad boat out there, one of the forums would have picked it up and say, "Hey, what's this? What's this golden Chinese swan designed pop out?" Right? You just Google that, and something will come up. And if there's, if anyone's been having a hard time with the design, it'll be talked about. People would know. Wouldn't be so popular. Probably didn't sell many boats. All those sorts of issues. But it's a good thing to do. Do your research, and that'll tell you more about your boat than the numbers. I always go to, when we assess a boat, I very quickly go to sailboat data. If you remember that, you've got all the designs. It's an amazing website. Occasionally you find a boat they don't have, but then there's not many of them around. But if you go sail, the design and boat you want, sailboat data, hit it, you'll get all the statistics, usually including how many are built, and then just do some research and you'll find out. If it's a fine racing boat, however, that's been built specifically for racing, I think it's important to look at all those issues because some of them can be extreme and not really suited, but you wouldn't be checking that anyway for a boat for the South Pacific. So usually you're pretty right, And in fact, I've said before a couple of times, I have no idea what the point of vanishing stability is on a West Sail 32, for instance. I could probably find out somewhere, but you just know they're a safe boat. They're going to come back. And the same with the Russell 36. I've never gone down that track. You just know it's a wholesome boat. Trademan 35, it's a wholesome boat. They're all really cool. And most of I'm a big fan of I've got to be careful what I say here. I have no concerns about current production boats, right? They're all cool, they're designed for market and they're all safe and they're blah, blah, blah. But I'm a real fan of production boats that are up to about the year 2000 or thereabouts because they were built differently than some of them are now. And they have proper timber interiors. I like timber interior rather than a hard-edged sort of apartment type of interior. You can still buy some boats like that, but mostly now every boat is virtually prefabricated fit outs, really hard corners, nothing to hang on to. I'm always amazed when you see the big maxi boats or like pretty big serious money boats, and they take great delight in taking the photos out sailing with one person on the helm, no one on deck, and you look at the deck, there's not even anything to hang on to. There's no handrails, not to mention where you put your stuff on the boat. So they're pretty much like big day sailors. And that's fantastic because the beauty of sailing is you've got boats for everyone. People like that sort of boat and they do the things they like with it, but other people want a boat to go to sea. And that's where you come to Explorer and, North to Swan Explorer. There's some parts about it that are not my ideal cruising boat because I've always, I'm a great water person, have been all my life, diving, just everything in the water. So when you're in and out of the water, you want a boat like a Beneteau Oceanus or something where you step straight through the back of the boat onto the platform at the back and jump in the water. And a swan, forget it. You got to climb up a ladder. So access to the water is not good. And if you've got a real cruising boat, that's what you want. And a real cruising boat doesn't sail many ocean miles. It does short hops, maybe from island to island, and then spends a month or so in the islands and another short hop. But a swan is meant to go places, right? It's a real ocean voyaging boat, and you don't need to get in the water. I'm getting a bit distracted now, but that's just a reference to Explorer, and then they're the most amazing seaboat, ocean boat. Just the design is there, and the flush deck sort of thing, and it's very super safe, super capable ocean boat. But I wouldn't have a clue what the point of vanishing stability is on a Swan 57. I've never even looked, because you just know it's right. It was S&S. So I hope that answers your question anyway. You don't have to be an expert to know what might be a good boat. This is my favorite question. Steve, when I saw this the other day, I thought, that's the best all-time question I've ever had on any of the Q&A. So you win the gong there. Hang on a minute. Yep, very good, Steve. Is the world flat? Of course it's flat. If I go for a walk from here to the supermarket, it's flat. I just keep walking, it's flat. I'm not sure why would it be anything else but flat? Geez, I laughed. So thanks, mate. Okay, John Pinto. A few questions, Don. How many knockdowns and rollovers did Kirsten have? No rollovers. And I'm not sure how many knockdowns she had. She had a few. Not super bad. Okay, I've never heard her talk about a super bad knockdown. Abelish had a few knockdowns, but again, no rollovers. Captain Goog, he had a couple of knockdowns. I didn't count them. I couldn't tell you. The only one that I know that went close to a rollover was Ian when he went down. Even he's not sure. When you listen to all his commentary, he's a little bit unsure of whether it was a rollover or a severe sort of pitch pole that sort of went down, blah, blah, blah. So sorry, I can't give you more statistics than that. Why did some have more than others? Well, they obviously got worse weather. I don't think there's anything specific standout on the boat designs. It's just when you're in worse weather. It could be said different people handled their boats different ways in heavy weather, and that can be relevant. And I won't, I'm not criticizing anyone, because every wave is different, every storm's different. The situation with the skippers are different, on where they are at the time and this, that, and the other. But certainly running downwind, steering, or hanging on, the boat is going to look after the boat a bit better than if you just let it lay a hull. If you're running with warps compared to a drogue, there might be a little bit difference in speed. The way you're angling the waves, they're all considerations as to what actually happens to the boat. So it's varied. Could you add the recommended reading list on the website? Basic books. No, we don't. I've got quite a few emails from quite a few people about, put this on the list, put this on the list, put this on the list. You know where you're going to get your best list? Mr. Google, right? We don't need to. If you want to have books on celestial navigation, because I'm not going to sit down and review the books on celestial navigation and stuff, just keep going Google. I think generally the idea of the GGR reading list is sort of GGR specific type books, that relate to the Golden Globe race or people associated with the Golden Globe race or things like that. So we're not going to expand it and end up with 500 maritime books there. There's probably better book lists than that. But thanks for the suggestion, though. I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying best bet is to go Google, and your next best bet is to go YouTube. If you're a lazy person, you can watch it all on, the tutorials on YouTube. It's quite amazing what's there. It's quite cool. Books on celestial sailing for us non-sailors. Yeah, just Google it to understand a little bit more about what's involved. I'd encourage you to do it. It's quite a fascinating art and science and all that sort of stuff. It's not as hard as you think. Do you plan to write your memoir someday? That's me. Sort of. I was offered a book contract. Ooh, jeepers. Long time ago. It was before 2010, and it was going to be called What's Next, and I'll still do it one day. The contract offer has expired, and it was going to be in 3 parts. It was explaining 3 things, all the different things that I've done in a chronological order, as in adventures and stuff, and then how I funded that, where did the money come from to do all these different things? Because I've never had a silver spoon and I've never had unlimited sponsorship. And then my philosophy on the whole thing as well, which I will do eventually, but I always tend to be going forward rather than looking backwards and never get enough time to do things. But anyway, I'm sure you have many followers who would love to read about the story. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, maybe. And the highs and lows. Yeah, there's been plenty of both, but we're still going. And Trevor, question: how efficient is Jeremy's OE2 when sailing close to the wind under his current conditions? Well, the challenge for this sort of stuff, it's a very efficient sailboat. It's a beautiful sailboat in flat water. Every boat is, you can really crank it up there. And if you're racing around the buoys, usually that's semi-protected water where you can, again, crank it up and it's a great sailboat. I have no question about that. When you're out in the ocean and this stuff, you've got these big seas. You can't hold it up really high. You can't hold it at, tack through, say, 80 degrees. That's 40 degrees each side of straight ahead if you're a non-sailor. Because the sea just knocks you around, just stops you dead. So you've got to pay off a little bit. And the other thing is there's the human element. You can't hold high and get bang, bang. You got to live on board. So and you don't want to stress the boat. So there's more to it than sailing efficiency. You've got to look after your boat. You've got to look after the skipper. You've got a long way to go. And he's really going nowhere at the moment because the weather is so crazy. It's just going to be headwinds for a long, long time. So you've got to pace yourself. So that's more of a consideration than the actual design of the boat. That's the reality. And what other GGR designs would be better beating into Biscay? Well, certainly some of the boats are better. Some of the current range of designs in this edition of the GGR are better going to windward than others. I would say for sure. In flat water, good conditions, similar sails, the Rustler 36 is a better windward boat than the Cape George 36. No question. But how often do you get those conditions? Not very often. So again, I wouldn't necessarily be after a real windward boat to do the GGR, but nothing wrong with having a good windward boat. Look at Simon's Biscay 36. Nice boat, all rounder, and nothing special about any particular point, but overall, it's really nice. It's a good all rounder. So, Matt. Hey, Don, what was the brand of wet food most used by the entrants? Well, when you understand what all wet food means is you don't have to you can eat it without cooking it even, and you don't have to add water. So it's already food, ready to go. The most you're likely to do is heat it up. And in France, you go into the supermarkets and they've got some of the best wet food you can ever imagine. It's all in tins. But some of the tins you'll pay €10 for, a tin like this with duck and bloody bits and pieces or chicken or whatever. But it's serious food that's then just put in a tin. And it's one of the few places in the world where you see a lot of that. It's just, and they have a lot of it in the preserving jars. You buy it actually in the supermarket, which is sort of like boutique people, not like a big international conglomerate name that's making this stuff. It's more small to medium-sized businesses, and they do really good food that you buy off the shelf in supermarkets that's quite tasty. So it's hard to pin it down to say who's done what brand it is and what is it. You just need to be in a French supermarket and go and hit the shelves. And there's quite a bit on it, but no particular brand per se that stands out anyway. Richard, did you get a debrief from Michael Guggenberg aboard Nuri? We haven't done it yet. Unfortunately, Gug was particularly busy when he wrapped up. He wanted to get back home. He had his film crew here. He had some supporters. They had to sort the boat out, do all the bits and pieces. And a couple of times we tried to schedule the technical walkthrough with the boat, which we will do, but in the end it was impossible, and we didn't want to get in their way, so we didn't push it. But we both agreed that we'll try and do it when he comes back for the prize giving. So that one will take a little bit longer. There's not seemed to be a look around down below before the race. That's exactly right, because there was Kirsten's and Gugs that were a bit hard to get to. And I don't think we got down onto Guy de Boer's boat either, because we didn't want to bother him, and it was hard to get the right time. But we did Kirsten's after the race, and we'll get Gug before the other. And Guy de Boer will eventually get there. He's rebuilt the boat. He's actually here on Sunday, and I forgot to tell Jane we're going out to dinner with him on Sunday. He's coming through Les Sables d'Olonne. He's going to deliver a boat from here around to La Rochelle. I think it's a multi-hull, one of the lagoons or something. So we'll be seeing him on Sunday. So we'll try and have a chat on Facebook on live. So we'll try and have a chat with Guy when he's here. No guarantees, but we'll try. And so, yes, I'll organise Goog's one. Is Kirsten really selling her boat? Yes, she is. I just confirmed that again today because I've got a few people talking about wanting to maybe do something with the boat. But she's not in a hurry to sell the boat. And she's, but it is going to be for sale. Kirsten on the boat. Interview with Ablish. Both are excellent. Thanks. What a great guy. Yes, absolutely. And he's got a Bollywood song now, and there's a couple 100 million people are probably going to see that Bollywood song, which is pretty cool. It's amazing. Apparently, I don't think I'm talking out of hand. Apparently, if you wanted to commission someone to write a song for you from that guy, it's a few $100,000. And he did it for nothing. So it's pretty cool. And it's pretty catchy. Not as catchy as Kirsten's maybe, but it's pretty cool. It's if you haven't listened to it, go listen to it. And it's quite a compliment to him. And apparently it's going to go nuts in India. So we'll see. Kit, I have a hypothetical. What would Abelish, Tommy, or Captain Goog have done differently to win the GGR? Oh, probably put a bucket on Kirsten's keel. That'd help. What else could have they done? I'm not sure. There's so much fate involved with winning the GGR, and in fact, we already, in conversations when you're talking to people, I'm saying that it's going to be very interesting to see about the cruise for. This is the entrance for 2026, and I really believe that the entrance will be a little bit humble pie when they're lining up, because we had the 1968 edition. Everyone knows what happened. We had the 2018 edition, and everyone knows what happened. We only had 5 finishes. We had lots of challenges and stuff like that. And I think for 22, I think the entrance came in thinking, yep, we're on top of it now. We've sorted that. And even I was saying we'd have half the fleet finish. And now it's happened again. We've got 3 finishes. That's it. Only 3 out of 16. And I really reckon that'll shake up the 26 fleet. And they'll all be thinking, well, I think I'm right. I think I've prepared everything right, but we'll have to wait and see. More so than ever before, because this was a real surprise, this edition, and I think that might answer the question. What would they do differently? Who knows? The boats were pretty well prepared this time, and only 3 finished. So, and I think if Abelish, to specifically answer your question, what he would do differently is have more time to prepare his boat. I think that's pretty clear. He didn't have enough time to prepare his boat. Try not to hit a ship in the weeks before the start. And that's probably the most important for Abelish. And then, I've lost my thing. And Captain Goog, what would he have done differently to win the GGR? Maybe not take 300 tins of sardines in the bottom of the boat, because they're out the back ready to ship to Nuri. They haven't been picked up yet, but they're heavy. And what else would have he done? I'm not sure, and I really think, I don't know whether Goog ever thought he'd win or was trying to win. You'd have to ask him on that, but I think he was absolutely doing one thing that he did very well, and that was finish the race. You got to finish the race to win it, So I think there's very little that just leave the sardines home. That'll be. Don't take the extra sardines for previous celebrations. Okay, Joan, I read in the Washington Post, that was a good article, that one, that Kirsten contracted COVID after she arrived back in France. And I recall you mentioned that Abelish also came down with it. No, I never mentioned that. We don't. You might have got it from someone else, but we don't talk about people's medical conditions. But I won't confirm or deny any of that. But is reduced immunity an issue for long distance sailors? Yes, it would be, no question. I had a year of isolation in Antarctica. My wife and I lived in a little box chained to the rocks, and it's a known fact that when you do that, there's no bugs down there, there's no flu, no nothing. And we just assumed when we came out after a year of seeing no one at all, living in the box, living in the frozen continent, that we'd come down with colds and the flu and all that sort of stuff. We got nothing. We got nothing coming back on the boat. When we hit civilization, we didn't try to hide. You didn't wear masks in those days. We got nothing. It was very weird. So I think it's more a case of everyone is handling differently. But yes, their immune system would have been primed to catch something. And that's sort of what happened. But having said that, and I know I can talk about it with our crew because we already are, when the boat came from Holland, to Les Sables d'Olonne, the second day out, got the word, oh, someone's got a cold. I said, oh, yeah, okay. Next day, I said, oh, 2 more have got a cold. I said, it ain't cold, it's COVID. And when they arrived here, all the crew had COVID. So there was 6 people on board, and we had 6 COVID cases. So Captain Coconut's an expert on that, but they didn't go anywhere for isolation, you see. So it just depends. There's a bit of luck of the draw there. Also, please let us know how they are doing. Oh, they're doing fine. They're doing great. I hope they are well. Yes, they are. Thank you for all your wonderful coverage. Thank you. Looking forward to welcoming Jeremy. Me too. So, Jonathan, does it make sense for Jeremy to fall off on port tack and head for the coast of Portugal and play the breeze north from there? He'd have better conditions, and although he might not arrive much earlier, he'd have a nicer ride. By the way, a fabulous job. Thank you. Crew and Kirsten is my new hero. Yeah, she's the new hero of a lot of people. The problem with going into the coast is that, and he doesn't know this, but if he went into the coast, he'd get more wind. But the other thing is, if you go into the coast, you get less sleep. You're going to have more traffic. You're going to have more navigational hazards. You're going to have more of all the things you don't want as a single-handed sailor. So if it was me, I wouldn't go close to the coast. I'd stay out there. I'd be wishing I had some weather forecasting and things like that. But yeah, the coast is always a problem. Sailor's log. Are digital video cameras without GPS allowed in the GGR? Yes, they are. And in fact, digital cameras with GPS are allowed because a lot of them have an internal GPS, but the only way you can see it is once you take the card out, put it in a card reader and put it in a computer. Then you can see the GPS and the data, position, speed, all those things. But you've got to have a second device to do that. And they're banned anyway, so you can still use the cameras. So digital cameras are now the norm for GGR, so it's okay. Pat, in his post-race boat tour interview, Ablis mentioned that he hardly used his trailing log at all. He said that when taking sights, he used to take one side exactly a beam onto the boat. You don't need a run then. Was he saying that he could get a position fix from a single sight? If so, I don't understand how that's possible. Well, when you take a fix, can you explain? I've never really done what he's talking about, but I can sort of understand the principle. If you take a fix when it's right abeam, when you do your position line, you sort of know where you're going because you go to and from your assumed position and things like that. So it's and when he talks about doing a run up, you only ever get one position line from your fix, okay? And so you can imagine this, forgetting about the stars and the heavenly bodies. If I took one position line from a lighthouse when it's there, okay, and then I move along at a set course and distance for like 6 hours, right, and then I take another position line from something over there, right, what you got to do is there's one position line there. You got to pick this position line up and you've got to move it parallel in exactly the same direction, but you've got to take it forward the distance and course that you've just sailed in the 6 hours. And having done that, you've brought that position up to your latest position and you get a crossover and you can get a position. So that's talking about running it up. But I don't want to get into giving you firstly a piloting lesson on navigation. That's your coastal navigation, how you do running fixes and things like that. But that's separate from, usually you take a morning sight. When you get a morning sight, if you can imagine this, you get a bearing line or a position line that's going at sort of like 45 degrees that way. If you take an afternoon sight, you get a position line that's going at, say, 45 degrees the other way. And if you take a meridian passage, you're going to take a position line that's going across through the middle. And if you then run up all of those position lines, or 2 of them, to your current position, you get 3 lines that cross over. And if you're a really good navigator, they'll all cross over as an X, boom, 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 with nothing in between. If you get 3 lines and they create what's called a cocked hat in the middle, they're not quite in the middle. All you know is you're somewhere in the middle of those 3 position lines. So it's quite fun and very satisfying when you do it. I haven't done it for years. The last time I did it was in 2010 when I did the bounty boat voyage. We were playing around with meridian passage, that's all. And I'm a celestial navigator, but I wouldn't have a clue at the moment. I'd have to spend a day reviewing and catching up again and get the latest. So that's it. Okay, so some quick questions. Thanks for that. And we'll See you again. We'll probably do another round of questions. They'll be on Facebook next time, and we'll see how many we get. Every couple of weeks is enough for questions because things are slowing down. The OGR, the Ocean Globe Race, is ramping up, and that's going to be a lot of fun. So, thanks for that. We'll see you. We'll see you again soon. See you later.